They're creepy and they're kooky, mysterious and spooky. They're all together kooky, the Democrat family. Their house should be a prison where people can't go see them. They send them all to prison, the Democrat family. Beat. Cheat. Deplete. So get Pelosi shot on, a broomstick with more claws on. We're gonna pay a call on the Democrat family.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they are creepy. Let's get right into the show. Hello and welcome to the Joseph Hurley Show. Today we have a great show for you. Now, listen, there is a lot of fear that's out there in the market right now. I really haven't seen this in a long time, but let's go back to something very important. There has been, probably since 2016, let's just call it when Trump came down the elevator. And actually, I think it was before that, but let's stick with the elevator. The American people over the years have been shaken. They've been awakened to what's going on. And do you think we're going to lose our momentum? Do you think that the universe is going to retract what's happened? Do you think that God is going to retract the spiritual awakening that has happened? Well, I can tell you, no, not going to happen. And the American people are starting to rise up, and they're going to catch hold of this fraud. And that's what it is. It's total and complete fraud. And we're going to show you a lot of things about that. Now, here's something that's equally important. I'm going to show you a video of a guy that I've never seen before. And I know what he's telling is correct, and he lays it out pretty well. And I'll put a marker in here because he lays out the history of World War I a little bit. And to me, it's worth watching, all of it, every bit of it, because it makes so much sense. It makes a lot of sense later on in the program. So anyway, with that, let's get into our first article from The Federalist. All right, guys, pull that up on the screen. Let's go. The Federalist. Joe Biden says Democrats created the most extensive and exclusive voter fraud organization in American history. October 24, 2020. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden recently bragged that Democrats have created the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. We're in a situation where we have put together, and you guys did it for our administration, ellipsis, President Obama's administration before this, we have put together, I think, the most extensive and exclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics, he said. Break from the text. Now, ladies and gentlemen, nobody is that stupid. I mean, really. I think. No, nobody is that stupid to say something like that. Back to the text. Biden's bizarre comments quickly spread on social media Saturday, with many claiming Biden was admitting to voter fraud. Quote, "What a terrible thing for Biden to say," unquote. President Trump posted on Instagram, quote, "Rig election," unquote. The White House press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, shared the clip on Twitter, saying, quote, "Biden admits to voter fraud," unquote. At Joe Biden brags about having the most extensive voter fraud organization in history, she wrote. The video was also shared by members of the Trump family, the Trump campaign, the Republican National Committee research account. Here are the quotes. And on the screen, you can see the Trump War Room, RNC Research, Donald J. Trump. And let's read his. Let's read this. Biden's comments follow rising concerns from Trump and Republicans over the potential for fraud associated with mass mail-in ballots. Break from the text. Ladies and gentlemen, as we have covered several times before, we did the COVID-19 Rockefeller Foundation word for word of that document that was released in April. And guys, this has been a total fraud on the American people, and it's been designed specifically for a time such as this. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the CCP virus cooked up in Wuhan, China, or Wuhan, China. And there were American politicians as well as Chinese politicians involved in creating a bioweapon to be released throughout the world for one specific reason, and that was to rig the American election. Now, you say, well, Joseph, that's a conspiracy theory, maybe far-fetched, but look at what's happened with this. Because of the COVID-19, the little COVID thing that was cooked up, they did the mail-in ballots. And that is where all the fraud has come from. Right there. And you're going to see very soon, you're going to see this. This all gets revealed. And all the swamp monsters are going to get revealed. All right, back to the text. Living in the state. Now, this is a tweet. This is the remainder of a tweet from @RealDonaldTrump. Living in the state, no matter who they are or how they got there, will get one. He's talking about the ballots. That will be followed up with professionals telling all of these people, many of whom have never even thought of voting before, how and for whom to vote. This will be a rigged election. No way. May 26, 2020, from President Donald Trump's Twitter feed. Well, guys, when we started this particular segment of the Joseph Farley Show of getting on the COVID-19 and the mask and all the other nonsense, we did that specifically for the reason to explain why we're having this COVID-19 issue, why we're having fraudulent numbers. Then all of a sudden they changed the way that they were calculating the cases. You remember that? You remember when they did that? They went from, in Collins County, City Council didn't want to go along with it. I'm sorry, maybe it was the county commissioners. Anyway, it was Collins County here in Texas that did not want to go along. And they said, now, wait a minute. Explain this again. For every one case, you're going to add another 15. So that really gets it to 16 people affected. So that's going to count to 16 total cases. Is that what you're saying? And the rat, Governor Greg Abbott, went along with all this, endorsed all this, started issuing executive orders on all this nonsense. This was all a setup for this specific time in history. Back to the article. While corporate media and Democrats like California Governor Gavin Newsom downplay the problem with the mail-in ballots, they've been rebutted by voters who have received duplicate ballots, received ballots despite being registered to vote in other states, or received ballots addressed to someone else. Certain states, such as New Jersey, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, already seen examples of voter fraud and discarded ballots, triggering Rep. Mike Johnson, Republican Louisiana, and Jim Jordan, Republican Ohio, to send a letter to the Attorney General William Barr asking the Department of Justice to investigate and prosecute alleged crimes related to mail-in ballots. Break from the text. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have been a proponent of Attorney General William Barr for a long time. He has deep state credentials. I understand. I know all that, but I'm telling you, old Billy Boy's going to come through in the clutch. I believe Attorney General William Barr has indictments ready to go. Watch and see. Now, look, it's not going to take long, and you'll find out if I'm right or wrong on this. So we'll see how that ends up. Back to the text. At a minimum, these incidents, all of which have come to light within the past week, seriously undermine the public's faith in this year's elections, the representatives wrote. Quote, at worst, they hint at a coordinated and subversive effort to capitalize on the current pandemic to improperly and perhaps literally sway the results of the election. End quote. Break from the text. Well, I would have to say they're exactly right. And this is an article in the Federalist. Jordan Davison is a staff writer at the Federalist. She graduated from Baylor University, where she majored in political science and minored in journalism. Well, that's great. Good for Jordan. Good article. Seriously undermining the public's faith in this year's election. My friends, our president, Donald Trump, has pulled one of the coolest deals in the world. You're going to find out that this massive fraud that is probably a global fraud, you're going to find out that this massive fraud for the United States, for all the 50 states, or as Obama said, 54 states or 56. Anyway, you're going to find out that this is the biggest RICO case in American history. And the reason that President Trump has been cool as a cucumber on this, I mean, he is mad, but he's not surprised. And you've got to remember that he's had intel and access to all the recordings, all the information. When these knuckleheads get on the phone, or when this idiot does this.
Secondly, we're in a situation where we have put together, and you guys did it for our administration, the President Obama's administration before this. We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
There you have it. The left is so arrogant. And really what it is when you become that arrogant, you get real blind about things that are going on. You think that you have okey-doked the American people. And the whole premise behind William Barr doing what he's done, it's setting these guys up. Now, Jeff Sessions, he really was a dope. No question about that. But was that part of Trump's plan? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But I'm telling you, I believe William Barr has this thing ready to go. Also, would you please give President Trump a little bit of credit from the standpoint of look at his history. He is the comeback king like no one else. The best counter attack that there is, which is getting ready to be released tomorrow, by the way. You know, he goes and plays golf. And then while he's at the country club, there's a wedding going on. I don't know if you guys saw that. Maybe we'll try to find that video to put in here. But he's doing a photo op. Does this look like a guy that's worried at all? President Trump. knows that these guys have cheated. And as I've said before, and I'll stand behind it, I believe you're going to see the biggest win in history of any presidential debate ever. You're going to see President Trump as being the number one guy. He got more votes than Obama. The whole thing. And with this software, it might open up a case that Obama really didn't win.
Thank you, Mr. President.
We love you.
Yeah, wouldn't it be interesting?
Yes.
Young and beautiful youth. Would like to have you.
Yeah. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you very much. Oh, you're all together.
Yes.
We love you.
Thank you, Mr. Trump. Thank you.
Was it so cool? Oh my God! I should have gotten a picture. I can't breathe. We should have gotten.
You just totally That is awesome.
Dad, we just got a picture with her.
That is awesome.
That was actually. I don't think I cried.
What a classy guy. Why? Because he's not worried about it. He's not sweating this a bit. Now, look, there are people out here that are praying, and I'm talking about people that really know how to pray, that really have a direct hookup connection with God. I'm not talking about the afternoon lunch prayer type people. I'm talking about the serious prayer warriors that are banging it out here in the spiritual world, because this is a spiritual fight, guys. This is not Republican. This is not Democrat fight. This is a fight for the very soul of America and the American people. And how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to keep your country? You know, one of the things that we did is that I stepped out of the different businesses that I have. Why? Because if we lose this election, there is no more business. You're done, son. You're going to be like the people in China. That's what you're going to be like. And there's the haves and the have-nots. And 99.999% are the have-nots. Very little wealth in China, except for the people that are running it, the criminal organization. Well, all these global crime syndicate criminals, including Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Dianne Feinstein, all of these people are getting exposed right now. You know, Feinstein and her husband had 16% in Avid Technology. I looked this up yesterday because a friend of mine had sent me some information about this computer software thing. Avid Technology is the one that gives you the propaganda. All the mainstream media receives their propaganda every morning from New York, I think at 3:30 or 4 a.m. East Coast time. They receive their talking points. And it's done through Avid Technology. Well, Richard C. Bloom, Dianne Feinstein's husband, which means they both own it, they owned 16%, a majority ownership. Now, I'm sure that they've transferred that because when I checked yesterday, it shows that they don't own any of Avid Technology now. I'm sure they transferred that into a family trust or something to that effect. But the American patriots are starting to do their research work. They're starting to dig on certain things that say, that doesn't make sense. How is it that we have 200,000 ballots that all of a sudden show up? What the Democrats have not figured out yet is President Trump and his team They already have this set up. Now, they're going to go into the courtroom and show the evidence, the proof, the watermarks, the other information in the way that they've captured these people because they knew that they were going to cheat. Listen, this is the Luciferian left. They have no morals whatsoever. And they're going to start eating their own here very, very quickly. This is Sunday at 1:40 p.m. Central Standard Time. Mark my words, Monday you're going to start to see a lot of crawfish going on with these people, and they're going to start pointing and ratting out their friends. Watch what happens. It's coming. So let's do this. Let's get into some headlines real quick. And before we get into our featured presentation, because this gentleman really does a great job on this. And you can mark your timer, I believe, at 11 minutes and 47 seconds is when he really begins to get into the second half of this about President Trump. The first half of it, he begins to lay out the information on the World War I. So anyway, let's hit some headlines, then we'll get into that feature presentation. All right, here we go. Okay, coming from the Gateway Pundit, this felt like a drug deal. Asian American ballot observer in Detroit describes mysterious van dropping off 61 boxes of ballots at 4 a.m. Well, that's interesting because the next morning, that's when we've had a big increase. So, 1,498 comments. I think there's probably going to be a lot more than that. On Tuesday night, President Trump was leading specifically in several swing states, including Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. President Trump had a significant lead in Michigan late last night. And all of a sudden, Joe Biden jumps up 200,000 votes and has a lead over President Trump. 200,000 votes? Yeah. Well, all right. Another computer glitch identified and corrected in Oakland County, Michigan, led to Republican winning his race. As Republican in Oakland County, Michigan, had his election robbed by a computer glitch, but then this was identified, which led to his winning his race. Break from the text. You think that's going to happen in the presidential race? Well, I think that and a whole lot more. Back to the text. The voter machine in this county are the same as those used across Michigan and Georgia and across the nation. That's going to be a good article. Okay, this next one from the twits at Twitter. Twitter locks out TGP assistant editor Christina Layla for 12 hours. No specific reason given. Again, guys, they don't need to have a specific reason given. It's their platform. If you don't want to use it, get off of it. But there might be something more to the story. What could that story be? Maybe when Congress begins to break up the tech companies for these massive, egregious issues of censoring, maybe they have their hand in the cookie jar. I'm just saying. Oh, and here we go. Here's an article from Big Mike. Angry Michelle Obama trashes Trump voters as supporters of hate and chaos after Trump smashes her little hubby vote haul record. Well, come on, Big Mike. That's the way it goes there, pal. In 2008, Barack Obama had 69,498,516 votes. In 2016, President Trump had 62,984,828 votes. In 2020, President Trump crushed Barack Obama's record with 70,803,881 votes so far. I'm going to say that's going to be much, much, much higher. And then she goes on to whine and cry about certain issues. But I am only doing the headlines and very little commentary. Okay, I'm trying not to comment much. Oh, and here's a little article for Fox News. There it is. Fox News heir's wife, Catherine Murdoch, calls Trump a dictator. Tweets out, "We did it after Fox News declares Biden winner." Come on. Guys, I've been telling you, Fox News, Murdoch, the whole thing, globalist, we're fair and balanced. Baloney. They're not fair and balanced. Their only mission in life is for propaganda and spin, and that's to deceive the American people. Now, there are going to be a lot of Fox viewers looking for a new home. Well, come on down, guys. Developing, Nancy Pelosi's chief of staff is chief executive and Feinstein's husband, a major shareholder at Dominion Ballot Counting System. Let's look at this one. This could be really good. Now, maybe we know why Feinstein, Richard C. Bloom, sold his Avid Technology stock to buy the new criminal activity here. Let's see. The great Sidney Powell was on the morning with Maria. Okay, you're not going to get anything off Fox News with Maria Bartiromo. Let me start over. The great Sidney Powell was on morning with Maria, and she unloaded on the monstrosity amount of Democratic vote fraud in the 2020 election. Okay, guys, a blind guy could see this. A deaf guy could hear this. A cripple could walk over this. I mean, come on. Back to the text. But during this discussion, Maria Bartiromo dropped a bomb as well. You know, just for fun, let's put this video in here.
Trump's legal team in contesting this election. Sydney, we talked about the Dominion software. I know that there were voting irregularities. Tell me about that.
That's to put it mildly. The computer glitches could not and should not have happened at all. That is where the fraud took place, where they were flipping votes in the computer system or adding votes that did not exist. We need an audit of all of the computer systems that played any role in this fraud whatsoever. And, you know, Joe Biden had it right. He said that he had the biggest voter fraud organization ever, and he didn't need people's votes now. He would need people later. They had this all planned, Maria. They had the algorithms. They had the paper ballots waiting to be inserted if and when needed. And notably, President Trump's vote in the blue states went up enormously. That's when they had to stop the vote count and go in and replace votes for Biden and take away Trump votes.
Is that a dog barking in the background, Maria? Or maybe that's Sidney Powell's dog barking in the background. But I thought she's, you know, in an office right in front of the White House. Guys, you're starting to see the fall of the fake news media. Okay, back to the video. Oh, wait, I know what it is. That's Toto getting ready to pull back the curtain on the Great Oz.
I've never seen voting machines stop in the middle of an election. stop down and assess the situation. I also see reports that Nancy Pelosi's longtime chief of staff is a key executive at that company. Richard Blum, Senator Feinstein's husband, significant shareholder of the company. What can you tell us about the interest on the other side of this Dominion software?
Well, obviously, they have invested in it for their own reasons and are using it to commit this fraud to steal votes. I think they've even stolen them from other Democrats in their own party who should be outraged about this also. Bernie Sanders might very well have been the Democratic candidate, but they've stolen against whoever they wanted to steal it from.
Sydney, these are incredible charges that you are making this morning. We, of course, will be following this, and we thank you for joining me today. Please come back soon. Sydney Powell. That'll do it for Sunday Morning Futures. The conversation continues. I'll see you tomorrow. Mornings with Maria on Fox Business.
We made USAA.
Oh, bombshell, and they all act so surprised. Guys, this software company has been around since 2003. There is a high probability that they're going to link this to Obama's 2008 presidential campaign. Uh-oh, what would happen if they were able to link this back to 2008 and Obama was never a legitimate president? Now, if you remember, just kind of keep this in mind, who was the guy that came up with the birth certificate, and then all of a sudden it went quiet? Was that President Trump? I think President Trump is going to start dealing some cards, and you're going to see that this week. Okay, guys, now remember, this next segment is long, but historically phenomenal. The guy does a good job in laying this out, so pay attention to the foxholes and everything else about World War I, and then he's going to explain President Trump's counterattack. Go.
Hello. Let's see if I can get you to change your mindset about all this. And by all this, I mean the election. I'm going to link to an excerpt from a video that Donald Trump posted, and it shows his son, Donald Jr., explaining why you should be very happy. We should all be very grateful that this happened, because this gives us an opportunity to see the most brilliant counterattack in American history. Now, counterattacks are actually more important than attacks, because it requires a completely different skill set. And if you my field of study is World War I, and the Germans were the greatest counterattack experts in World War I, and nobody ever learned how to do counterattacks the way the Germans did. And the German counterattack relied on hitting the enemy. Okay, the Germans use something called elastic defense, which is what Trump has done. The Germans invented elastic defense, and what you do is when the enemy attacks, you retreat, but you're giving up ground that isn't important to you. The enemy thinks it's important. And so the enemy is drawn deeper and deeper into your territory. And in World War I, they didn't, attack and then just keep going until they hit Berlin, for example. They would attack along a front, I don't know, three quarters of a mile wide, a little less, and they would take, say, the first three trench lines, the fire trench in front and the support trench and the reserve trench, and they would take these trenches, and then the trenches, a trench isn't just, like when you see them digging trenches today to build, to bury pipes. That's not what they were in World War One. They have the front part, or the part of the trench that faces the enemy, is called the parapet, and the part that faces your own side is called I've never said this out loud, believe it or not, parados or parados, I don't know. But the parapet is different than the side that faces the enemy is different than the side that faces your own side. The side that faces the enemy has sandbags, and it has steel loopholes for firing through. So when you took over an enemy trench, you had to reverse it. So it wasn't just a case of getting in the trench and it's like, okay, now we've made it. You had to reverse everything. And so you had to take shovels with you when you assaulted, and it took quite a bit of time. The men had to take, they had to move the sandbags from what was once the parapet and move it to the new parapet, which is formerly the friendly side of the trench. And so the assault troops often were encumbered by empty sandbags, which they had to fill with dirt and tie off, and they often had to dig in order to set their steel loopholes, and poor men had to carry these steel shields, which are really heavy, and so it took a while. So what the Germans did was they would fall back the way Trump has fallen back. The enemy would think that, I've taken the position, and then the Germans would attack on the flanks, on the sides, using the counterattack. And in the enemy's front, they had close combat experts, and the close combat experts had they relied on speed and firepower. So the men who attacked on the sides, on the flanks, in the counterattack, they had the usual infantry weapons, and the men who did the frontal attack, the frontal counterattack, the first men in line were carrying light machine guns, light mortars, and grenade launchers. And they were modified so that they could be set up instantly, and they would pour fire onto the enemy. When the Allies attacked, the British, the French, and the Americans, they had rifles, light machine guns, and rifle grenades. That was it in terms of weapons. And in the rifles and machine guns, you had to put your head up. You had to expose yourself. And so the counterattack division, they would have whole divisions that were trained only in counterattack. The men attacking from the front poured such heavy fire with machine guns, light mortars, and grenade launchers that the enemy, the machine guns forced the enemy to keep his head down, and then the mortars and the grenade launchers, they had curved trajectories, so they went up in the air and they came down right in the trench. And when you fire a rifle grenade, you could fire it from inside a trench without exposing yourself, because a rifle grenade, unlike today's, I guess today's rifle grenades could be used that way. You fire it at an angle, you fire it up in the air, and it goes in an arc. But you could fire it from inside the trench without exposing yourself. So the Germans had their own rifle grenades, but mostly they used grenade launchers and light mortars. So these things would come raining down, And while the heavy fire was being poured onto the enemy, the close combat experts who were armed only with hand grenades, pistols, and trench daggers, and these guys were chosen because they were extraordinarily physically fit. They had to be able to run as fast as they could, sprint for a full kilometer. That was the final test. And, I remember almost dying after the 50-yard dash. I think there was a 600-yard dash when I was in high school. I don't know. But, these guys had to run. They had to sprint for a full kilometer and be in shape to fight when they got there. And they fought with hand grenades, and then they jumped in the trench, and they used their pistols and their daggers to kill everybody in the trench. And the counterattack was much more violent than the attack. What the Allies would do is they would use what's called a creeping barrage with artillery, where the artillery would fire and the Germans would simply abandon the first three trenches, and so the artillery didn't kill anyone. It was the Germans had outsmarted this tactic, and then as the enemy were trying to convert the conquered trenches into their own trenches, they would be hit with the hardest hit they'd ever experienced, and they would retreat, having lost sometimes as much as 50% of their men. And until the end of the war, the Germans were able, with their counterattacks, right near the end of the war, I think it was at a village called Fismet, in France, and a German, something like I think 3 German platoons completely destroyed 2 entire American infantry companies. They used flamethrowers, light machine guns, and hand grenades. And 1 infantry company was completely wiped out. They suffered virtually 100% casualties, and the other virtually surrendered. So they lost virtually uniformly surrendered. So the Americans lost 2 full infantry companies. That's 400 odd men, and they were taken by 12. They were taken by about 48 to 60 men. So that was the counterattack. And we now get to witness the Trump counterattack. So I want you to change your mindset, okay? You need to change your mindset. This is going to be fun. It's another adventure, okay? This isn't bad. Trump dug a trap, a tiger pit, and everybody, they all fell into it. I haven't seen it, but apparently Anderson Cooper said that we're seeing the last flailing, thrashing of an obese tortoise lying on its back. So Trump is letting them all gloat because he's setting them up. He wants everybody to think he's done for. And then he's going to launch the most violent counterattack they've ever seen. So this is how Trump operates. And this is, again, I put up a video about the CISA, which is the new federal agency. It's part of the DHS, which is dedicated to finding and defeating election fraud. The court battles are part of it, but people think that's all Trump's going to do. No. What I just described to you, the German counterattack, you're under heavy fire. You can't put your head up to fire your rifle or machine gun, and there's nowhere to hide. You can't hide from these mortar rounds and these aerial grenades coming down on you and blowing up. Then all of a sudden these apes they start throwing hand grenades at you. They jump into the trench. They've got a pistol in one hand and a dagger in the other, and they just start going from man to man, shooting them and stabbing them. Shoot, stab, shoot, stab, shoot, stab. And if you throw up your hands and say, please, they'll say, okay, what they'll do is they'll take the bolt out of your rifle and put it in their pocket, and then they'll keep moving. So the German counterattack was the most terrifying thing anyone had ever experienced. The counterattack divisions were more feared than the assault divisions. And when you train, when you are extremely well trained in counterattack, you are a more important your element of any armed force than the actual assault troops. So be glad. I've told you over and over and over again, this is a great time to be alive. And now we get to see Trump counterattack without mercy. He's held back for a reason. And, I know I'm going to get in the comments, well, but I'm impatient, and I know you're right, but I want him to do it my way. And it's like, stick it up your butt. I spent 5 years trying to reach people like you. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm just telling you the reality of what's going on. There's some of you who get it. So you need to think of this as a magnificent, you need to be thankful that this happened, because now you get to see history in the making. Okay? Trump, I told you the whole time, my friend Carlos and I told you when we were on Twitter together for 5 years, Trump has not yet begun to fight. And you're all going, well, why not? What's he waiting for? He's waiting for this. He's waiting for this. And he's not fighting back yet because he wants everybody to count him out. And that's when he's going to counterattack. The German counterattack divisions waited until the enemy was sure that he was safe. And then they hit them harder than they'd ever been hit in their lives. They hit them with more violence than they'd ever experienced in their lives. Okay? The Germans specifically recruited men as the close combat experts who were 6 feet tall. This is back in the day when the average European man was like 5'7" or something. So, and these were brawlers. These were like, they were fighters. Trump is a fighter. So you need to, if you're going to be afraid, you're going to be afraid. Some of you get it, and now you have to start being happy. You have to start being grateful that you now get to see this happen, because it's going to be glorious. You're going to be so stunned. Okay? So, Nobody sees this coming. I see it coming. Donald Trump Jr. sees it coming. And of course, Trump's inner circle sees it coming. All right? They know exactly what's going to happen. And I consider myself a we because I can see what's coming. We have to wait until the enemy thinks he's safe. That's when the counterattack is the most effective. And you have to admit, it's going to be much more fun after watching them gloat for days and days and days and insult the president, calling him an obese tortoise, flailing desperately. Anderson Cooper, you're going to be eating your own words in such a way, you're never going to be allowed to forget that. You thought it was bad when you had your little mental breakdown over pee-pee and poo-poo, but nobody's going to let you forget that. And I just hope that wherever Anderson Cooper goes for the rest of his life, he's mocked for being that kind of person. So, to recap, the counterattack is more important than the attack. You win wars by counterattacking. And the coming counterattack is going to be the most violent and efficient one you've ever seen. So you need to be happy that this happened. Okay? You can be angry and happy. I'm still angry, but I'm also happy. I can't wait to see comeuppance. Comeuppance is justice. So, I tell people, be happy warriors. And it's like, okay, you're the reason I don't want to go back to social media. I only want contact with happy warriors. I don't want any more whiners. I don't want any more, as Donald Trump Jr. said, spineless Republicans. I want only happy warriors who look forward to the fight. Till Valhalla. All right? I'm happy because I know it's going to happen. And if you're not happy, it means you're not a real Trump supporter. If you don't know whether you're going to vote for me or not, then you ain't a real Trump supporter. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you're not happy, that means you don't have faith in your president. And obviously you never will, so that's why, I call it a trial separation, folks. So anyway, my latest thoughts. So, click.